I find it hard to live a balanced life. There's always one life area that's pulling my attention, causing me to neglect the others. Whether it's taking care of my health, managing my finances, or connecting with friends, I find it hard to keep up with these life admin tasks, fun or otherwise, especially when life gets busy. In 2025 though, I'm changing up my approach to life admin tasks. I want to tackle them in a way that's more fun, and thus incentivizes me to get more of them done, helping me live a more balanced life. This idea is called life admin gamification, and in this video, we're going to look at why I'm approaching life with this new system, a general overview of the game, the specifics behind how the game works, and how to get involved if you want to do this for yourself. But first of all, why? As said, I find it hard to achieve balance in my life, and more often than not, the scales are tipped in the favor of work. While I know that this is in part because I find value in my job and I enjoy what I do, spending so much of my time working has certainly led me towards burnout, getting to a point of feeling uncreative, which when you do creative work is not a great thing, and also just like a general sense of frustration around not doing more of the things that I enjoy. Part of it is also because my work feels immediately rewarding, and that loop of work, reward, kind of just keeps me on that hamster wheel. That positive feedback loop just leads me to putting everything else kind of on the back burner. So that's where this new gamification system comes in. I wanted a way to reward myself for doing those things outside of work that are things I either just want to do more of because they're fun, or things that I feel I should be doing more of because they're good for me. Effectively doing more of those tasks that don't feel immediately rewarding, the payoff isn't as noticeable or as immediately obvious, but I still want to do them and I want a way to incentivize myself to get them done. Whether you're looking for more balance in your life or just want to bring in a bit of fun, then this could be for you. So how does it actually work? The long story short version of it is that life is divided into key areas depending on what you want your game to cover and what you want to do more of. This could be all of your life areas or just some that you want to focus on. Once you have those life areas decided though, then you consider what tasks or activities you want to do more of in those areas. With your list of tasks, you then assign each of those a certain number of points or XP, and then as you complete those tasks throughout the year, you gain those points. The points that you gain work towards leveling up your character, and as you level up, your character receives rewards. While that's the general overview, let's have a look at the specifics. Because this is an RPG style game, you can totally design a character for it if you want to. I've decided that my character is just me, because I'm doing this for myself. Ain't no imaginary creature gonna be stealing my points. But if you wanted it to be more fantasy inspired, you could be an elf, or a fae, or a gnome. I would probably be a gnome. All magical creatures or basic ass humans are welcome in this game. The most important thing here though is that we want to feel responsible for this character in a positive way. We want to do the things that are going to get them the experience points to level up. Our next big consideration though are the life areas, or in the game, I'm calling these skills. As said, these skills are just the different life areas that are included in your game. You can include all of your life areas if you want to, or just limit it to the ones that you want to level up in or get stuff done in. For me, that is effectively every life area that does not work. I don't really need to incentivize myself to do work, it just kind of happens. I already have that reward system in place for myself, and the point of the game is to get me doing more with my life than just work, so it doesn't really need to be part of the game. I've taken my ones and given them RPG inspired names. So for inspiration, mine are Vitality for physical health, Spirit for mental health, Insight for personal development, Stewardship for home environment or managing my home environment, Prosperity for financial health, Charisma for social connection, and Gaiety for leisure and fun. I've also decided that I have another category of Initiative, and that's effectively for any of those tasks that I initially feel a resistance towards doing, and on a typical day I'd probably go, ha, that's a future me problem. I want to put less things on the plate of future me, so I'm having a separate category just for Initiative for any time I actually do the task rather than saying I'll do it later. As said, your categories are completely up to you because your life areas are going to be different to mine. The ones you want to include in your game are going to be different to me as well. I do have work in one section of my setup, and for that I'm calling it trade. I mean, you could call it career or whatever you really want to. You don't actually have to rename them at all. I just wanted them to be a little bit more fantasy RPG themed. Once you have each of your life areas or skills though, then we want to consider what tasks or activities you want to be doing more of within these. This could be because it's good for you and thus you want to do more of it, or it could be because it's fun and you want to bring more fun and joy into your life. To figure out my game tasks though, I first brainstormed the different sub-areas in each of my life areas, so considering the general things that fall underneath each of those categories. Once I had those, then I considered what specific tasks or actions I wanted to do on a regular basis underneath those. These are the tasks and actions that I can do to make it feel like I'm actually taking care of that area of my life. There are also things that I will typically do on a repeated basis, so whether that be daily, weekly, monthly, they're not one-off individual project style things, they're more of the things you will repeat time and time again. You do not have to list out every single possibility in each life area. That can lead to analysis paralysis, like, oh my gosh, have I missed something? Like, what's missing from this? You also don't have to have a complete list at the very start of your gaming experience. You can add more to them as you go along, as you recognize other things that you could be doing in each of your life areas or skills. My recommendation is to have at least maybe 3 or 4 options in each of them as a starting point, and you can add more as you go along. Otherwise, what you can do if you want to have a more in-depth, thorough list, set yourself a timer for say 20-ish minutes, maybe half an hour. Just time restrict your brainstorming. This just helps us to, 1, stay on task, and also make sure that it doesn't eat up all of our time just sitting there trying to think of every single tiny thing. Once you have the task list though, then we need to consider how many points are going to be associated with each of those tasks, or how many points is your character going to gain every time you complete them. This game revolves around the idea of do a task, get some points, and those points counting towards leveling up my character and getting rewards. So deciding the point value for each of the tasks is a pretty important step. When it came to assigning my points to each task, there were 3 main considerations. One being the difficulty of the task. More difficult, more points. One being the timeliness of the task, or how time intensive it was. If it's going to take more time, I'm going to give myself more points for it. And the third one being personal preferences. If I find the task to be particularly unappealing, I'll give myself more points for having done it, just as a way to further incentivize myself to get it done. There's no specific formula around how you want to balance those, it is very much a personal preference, but I did try to make sure to consider all 3 of those when assigning my points. I decided to go on a 1, 3, 5 point scale because I want those 5 pointers to feel like a big accomplishment. They're going to give me a decent chunk more points compared to just doing a 1 point task 3 times. Essentially though, we just want to go through the entire task list, consider the difficulty, the time intensiveness, and the personal opinion of the task, and assign points to each of those. As said, the tasks on this list are those things that I do regularly or repeatedly, whether that be daily, weekly, monthly. They're gonna come up a few times. What I also wanted to have though were bonus points, or ways to give myself just a little bit more of a boost in my points from doing something that was a bit more special or a bit bigger. These are for projects, the things that require multiple steps to do. They're not just those one-off repeated actions, and I want to reward myself for doing them, and each of these is also tied to a skill area. So for instance, reaching a certain savings goal is a project for financial health or prosperity. Making a personal knowledge management system is a project for personal development or insight, and doing something like a quarterly reset is a project for mental health or spirit. These projects also have points tied to them, but I didn't want to just go with like 1, 3, or 5 because these are bigger, they take more time, they're a little more difficult. So each of these projects ended up with either 5, 10, or 15 points. Again, depending on difficulty, time intensiveness, how uninclined I'll probably be to do them, with more points for things that are more difficult, more time intensive, more unappealing. So we have our projects, we have our actions, we have points associated with them, but how do we actually level our character up? My game has 2 different types of leveling, character levels and skill levels. So having a look at skill levels first, skill levels are achieved by completing tasks that fall under that skill area. These points accumulate across the year, they don't ever reset, and as you hit the required number of points for each level, you level up. For instance, for my physical health or vitality skill, I need to get a total of 40 points to reach level 1, get to 80 points to reach level 2, or 120 points to reach level 3. How you assign the points required is up to you, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. First, we want to distinguish between skill levels and character levels. While skill levels are achieved by collecting points in just one skill area, character levels consider any points across all of the areas. So for instance, points from vitality and spirit and prosperity and whatever areas we're working on are all going to count towards increasing your character level. Character levels are tied to the months though, and you can only go up by 1 character level per month. This gives us a maximum of 12 character levels for the entire of the year. This is because I wanted the game to incentivize me to have a more consistent approach to each of my different life areas. This is effectively the part of the game that is going to lead to a more balanced life, rather than just kind of spam doing tasks at certain points. Let's have a closer look at the 2 different types of leveling though. Starting the year, let's say that we do a 5-point task in vitality or physical health. Those 5 points will count towards the skill leveling in vitality, and they'll also count towards the character leveling for January specifically. As we go through the month, we accumulate points in each of the skill areas and also as part of the overall January total for our character level. A new skill level is achieved at any time you accumulate the necessary number of points to level up in that skill. So for instance, 40 points to reach level 1 in vitality. So if we hit that 40 point total on January 8th, then we level up in vitality on January 8th. The points here don't reset, we just keep adding to the total. Character levels, on the other hand, will only level up at the end of the month, and only if we've reached the necessary number of points. For me, that's 550. At the end of January, let's say our points look like this. Focusing on our skill area of vitality as an example, and the overall total for January, the vitality skill has leveled up to level 3, having achieved over 120 points, but hasn't quite reached level 4, for which we need 200 points. As the total points for the month of January is over 550, then the character has achieved character level 1. Come February 1st though, the points towards the next character level reset, while the points in each of the skill areas remain. Only points collected in February can count towards February's character leveling, but points in each skill area across the whole year can count for skill leveling. So effectively, points collected in each of the skill areas count towards those skills and also to the character level for the overall monthly total, but you have to reach a set amount of points in the month across all of those skill areas to level up your character. At the start of each month, that value resets, so each of those character levels is only dictated by the points accumulated within the month. But how do we actually figure out how many points we should have to reach each of those levels? Well, you could pick these arbitrarily, just, pick a number out of a hat if you wanted to. You could also make it so that each subsequent level is the exact same number of points, and you could also make it so that each skill area requires the same number of points. But I went with something a little bit different. I didn't want all of my skill areas to require the same number of points. Some of those life areas just have way more tasks that I could do to get points, so it didn't really seem very fair for them to all have the same finish line to cross. I also noted that some of my skill areas are just going to be harder for me to do tasks in. They're things that I just find more challenging naturally, so I don't really want to make the bar for that one as high as the ones that I find quite easy to do or fun, or they're not really going to be as much of a challenge. The process of figuring out the appropriate number of points for each level is a little mathsy and kinda complicated, but to help you out, I've made a template that you can use to calculate how many points you might want for each of your levels. All you have to do is list out all of the life areas and the tasks that fall within them, and then assign how many points you want for each of those different tasks. Then we want to consider how many times you would do each of those tasks in a perfect month. Like if you managed to get every single thing you wanted to do in the perfect amount, so doing the daily things daily, the weekly things weekly, how many times would you do each of those tasks across the month? Knowing that perfection is not realistic though, and wanting to make the levels a little bit more realistic, then we want to consider how difficult each of those life areas are probably going to be for us to work on. You just have to rate each of your life areas out of 10 to say how fun or easy you find them. So a higher number for a fun, easy one, and a lower number for one that you find difficult and less enjoyable. This will scale your level requirements appropriately, both for your skill levels and for your character level. Just giving you some numbers to work with. You don't have to go with them, but it can be a really nice starting place for you. Here you can see what my point requirements are for each skill level and character level, and they are certainly different to each other. This just reflects the difficulty that I have with certain life areas, or the number of tasks that I have associated with them. For instance, the prosperity one, I don't find particularly difficult, but there just aren't as many tasks to do in that life area. While earning points and leveling up my character is a good incentive, I wanted to further incentivize myself by offering rewards for reaching new levels. Given the fact that the point of the game is to incentivize me to do more of these things, it's nice to have some immediate and fun payoff. Just a way to reward myself for getting things done. I'm going to be going through and assigning rewards for each possible skill level and character level. Ideally, these rewards are going to be actually related to the life area that I'm putting them with. They're going to be things that will actually incentivize me, because if I don't want it, then I'm not really going to work to get it. And I also want them to appropriately scale with the level I'm reaching. For instance, if I reached, I don't know, level 1 in prosperity, I'm not going to reward myself with an iPad. It feels a little bit misaligned with the amount of effort that it probably took to get to level 1, and also kind of undoes the work that I'm going to be doing in the prosperity category. Again, we don't have to fill all of these in at the start of the game, but knowing what's coming up, at least for the first 3 to 4 levels, would be a good way to keep us motivated. So we have our character, we have our skill areas, our leveling system, tasks, points, all of that. How are we actually capturing this information though? There are several key ways that I'm going to be capturing information from my game, with those primarily being split between my journal and a spreadsheet. It's very much a question of personal preference as to what information you store where, but the system I'm going with is that in my yearly collections journal, I first have a summary sheet as a space to write out what the mission or purpose behind the game is, color in whether I achieve each character level for each of the months, and also indicate what skill levels I'm getting in each of my different skills. And then in my everyday journal, I have a pocket in the front where I'm going to be storing my task list, which will also summarize the number of points for each of my tasks. And I also have a space to outline what projects I can work on and the points associated with those. The pages that follow are my reward system, so how many points I need for each of the levels and what rewards I achieve if I hit those. And I'm also going to be setting up some monthly pages surrounding like statistics or a summary of which life areas I focused on for the month, that kind of thing. I haven't decided on the structure of those yet, but I am interested to see what I can come up with. For the actual recording of the points and which tasks I've done, for this I'm going to be using a spreadsheet, mainly because I can set it to auto-populate how much XP each of the tasks is associated with. I can also have it do the math for me, so I don't have to calculate like how many points do I have in each of the skill areas, how many points do I have for the month overall. That functionality is also included in the template that I mentioned before, and that one's linked in the description box if you want to grab it for yourself. Now, just because this is my system or how I'm going to be doing my life admin gamification does not mean that it is the only way to do life admin gamification. You can take elements of my system and tweak them, you can base it on a completely different style of game if you want to, and I've been really excited to hear about how members of our community are already doing this. If you want to chat with other people who are going to be trying out this life admin gamification for 2025, or people who have already started, then jump over to our community Discord. We have a space in there specifically dedicated to this system and designing them, having fun with it, and we'd love to have you join us to talk about how you're gamifying your life for the year ahead. That one is also linked in the description box, or you can use the QR code on screen to take you directly over there so that we can chat together. Very much looking forward to having us all cheer each other on in the year ahead. So, if you want to get involved with this process, how do we do it? First step, pick your life areas. Which ones do you want to include? Which ones are you leaving out? If you want to rename them, go right ahead. Otherwise, you can just keep it super simple. 2. Pick the specific tasks that are going to fall under each of those life areas. What are the things that you want to do daily, weekly, monthly? Once you have your list, then it's time for step 3. Make sure that you assign points to each of those different tasks. Anything that's harder, more difficult, more time intensive, or more unappealing, make sure that that gets more points to incentivize you to do it. The next step is to come up with your leveling system. So how many points are going to be for reaching level 1, 2, 3 in each of your skills? How many points points are going to be needed for your character leveling each month. If you want help with that one, remember we do have the template linked in the description box to do that math for you. Once you have your life areas, your tasks, the number of points associated with them, and the points needed for each of your levels, then it's time to set up your information capture system, whether that be in your journal or on a spreadsheet. If you wanted some ideas of layouts that might help you with your life admin gamification, then this video is the next one to check out. In that one, I've got layouts to keep track of my leveling, I've got side quests and more, so click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.